If you're looking for a comprehensive way to get more height for off-roading or to fit larger wheels and tires at a more budget-friendly price, then you're going to want to check out this kit from Rough Country. This is a bolt-on, all-inclusive lift kit that's going to give you 3.5 inches of extra height and level out the stance of your Ram 1500 while still maintaining good ride quality and road manners, in addition to giving you some additional off-road capability. Now, before we dive in too deep here, a quick note on fitment. This kit is designed to fit 2019 and newer four-wheel drive Ram 1500s that are not equipped with the air ride suspension system, and it will also not fit RHO, TRX, or V6 models. Now, there's a lot we have to cover with this kit, but we'll start with the thing that you all want to know about, and that is how much tire can you fit. This is again a 3.5-inch overall lift, so it's going to provide you with enough clearance to run most 34-inch tires. However, as you push closer to that 34-inch mark, you may encounter some rubbing or need to do some minor trimming. So for that reason, we recommend sticking with 33s for this kit. That way you have more options for tires, you're still going to get that beefy look and additional capability, and you won't have to deal with rubbing or other issues. To achieve that lift, you've got a lot of different componentry. Starting out up front, you get a set of Rough Country's heavy-duty upper control arms. These are forged aluminum arms, and they include new Cleveite rubber bushings, so they're going to be excellent at absorbing road impacts. They're pretty lightweight, but they've got a lot of structural rigidity too, and enough to hold up to whatever abuse you can think to throw at them. Now, you might have also noticed that the ball joints are angled to accommodate for the lift. So despite the fact that this kit adds quite a bit of height, these are going to keep things pretty close to your factory suspension geometry, which is going to help maintain that factory ride quality and provide you with a full range of motion so you can take advantage of that additional height. Plus, this kit in particular gives them a cool red finish over top, so they'll be protected a bit more against rust and corrosion, and they're going to look good while they're doing it. But the thing that actually gives you that 3.5 inches of additional height is the set of Rough Country's N3 premium struts that are included here. These are going to combine with those control arms and give you that total 3.5 inches of lift. And as you can see, they come pre-assembled, so there's no need to mess with spring compressors or anything like that. You can take these right out of the box and just bolt them on. Now, these are nitrogen charged and they feature infinitely variable damping, so it's going to give you a smooth, almost stock ride quality. But these are also designed specifically for lifted applications. The damping here is tuned to keep the ride smooth out on the road while still doing a good job of absorbing impacts and controlling rebound when you're out on the trail. Now, that nitrogen charging also helps with heat dissipation, so even under aggressive washboard type off-road conditions, these are not going to suffer from fade. So that means you can use them to their fullest extent without having to worry about them fading or you losing control of the truck. Now, to balance that out, in the rear we have a heavy-duty coil spring spacer that's going to lift up the springs and again help maintain that stock geometry. These are going to add up to about a 2-inch lift overall in the rear, and so that is going to both lift the truck and it will help level out the stance since the front struts are a little bit taller. You also get a set of Rough Country's N3 premium shocks to keep everything in check and maintain good ride quality. Like the front struts, these are nitrogen charged, they feature that infinitely variable damping, so you're going to get that smooth, almost stock ride quality, and you've got a nice matched set of shocks both front and rear. Construction here is all quite solid. As I mentioned, the control arms up front are made from forged aluminum for strength and weight savings. No seams or welds to break on these, so that you can be sure that they're strong. They also include brand new bushings and ball joints, and the ball joints had an integrated Zerk fitting at the top, so you can just pop that cap off and grease them up to help extend their life. Now, the front struts and rear shocks have a massive 1 3/8 inch bore and a hardened chrome piston rod, so they're going to stand up to the elements quite well too. The bodies are finished in this silver paint for additional good looks and durability. And those spring spacers that we were talking about, well, these are fabricated from a nice hefty plastic type of material, so these are not going to rust and they're not going to have issues with welds breaking too. So overall, this is a very solid kit that's going to keep everything well protected and keep your truck on the road and looking good for a long time. Pricing for this kit comes in at about $1,200, and for everything you're getting here, that is a really competitive price. Now, there are, of course, less expensive options out there that will still give you 3.5 inches of lift, but they're not going to have all the features like the shocks, the control arms, and they're not going to perform as well. Now, you could also spend a lot more on another kit, but for a truck that's going to see mixed street and trail usage, this is an excellent option that's not going to break the bank and not going to ruin the ride quality of your truck. Installation will get a 2 out of 3 on our difficulty meter and will likely take you upwards of 5 hours or so to complete. Now, you can certainly do this at home in your driveway, especially since everything you need to get it done is included, but it is a bit of an involved job. If you aren't necessarily comfortable disassembling suspension components, professional installation is always an option. You are going to need things like a spring compressor for the rear to get everything back into place. However, this is a job that you can accomplish at home as there are no modifications needed to the truck. You just bolt everything into place and then you can hit the road. As I always say though, when it comes to lift kits, make sure once you've got everything buttoned up that you go ahead and get your truck professionally aligned so that it drives straight and true down the road. All that said though, let's head out to the shop and we'll show you how to get this installed on your truck with a step-by-step guide.
All right, for this install, you're gonna need a pry bar, a impact driver, a 3/8 ratchet, a 21 mil wrench, a 19 mil wrench, a 16 mil wrench, a 15 mil wrench, a clip removal tool, 5/16 socket, a 16 mil socket, 18 mil socket, various 21 mil sockets, 24 mil socket, a pair of vice grips, and also a hammer or a mallet. Not shown on camera, a set of jack stands, a floor jack, and possibly a pole jack. Today we're going to be installing a lift kit on our Ram, but first we're going to watch a quick uninstall of the front and rear suspension, and we'll meet you right back here when you get finished.
First things first, guys, of course you want to get your truck up in the air, whether you're using a lift or if you're working on the ground with the jack and jack stands. Now I got my 22 socket here in my air tools. I'm going to get this wheel out of the way so we can get started. First thing we're going to do with the wheel out of the way is disconnect a couple of ABS line clips. That way when we're lowering down our entire spindle, it's not putting extra pressure on our brake lines. Now this line here, the ABS line and the brake line are connected. So we're going to pull back on this plastic clip to disconnect and slide those guys out. Follow the ABS line up and it's connected to the upper control arm. We're going to wiggle that guy back and forth to disconnect it. Follow it back down to the spindle and there's one more to pull out. All right, now on the back of the spindle, you'll see this metal clip. It's more of an S-shaped. We're just gonna wiggle this rubber grommet out of that. And now you can see this whole thing's loose and has a lot of slack. Next step, we're gonna pick up our 21 millimeter deep socket and we're gonna loosen it and remove the nut holding on our tie rod end. Now what I like to do is once I have that nut off, pull the tie rod end out, and I like to put the nut back on just so we don't lose it. Next, we're going to remove the bottom bolt of our strut. Now, it's a 21 millimeter bolt head with a 15/16 nut on the opposite end. So I've got my wrench on the nut there and my 21 on the bolt head. We're going to get this guy off. Now, we may need a hammer to just tap this out, but if you can wiggle it out, you can do that now. All right, next we want to remove the bottom of our sway bar end link nut and the upper control arm to spindle nut. Those things are going to have the entire spindle drop down, or the lower control arm as well, and we want to make sure we have that weight supported so it doesn't drop down on us. So if you're working on a lift, grab a pole jack at this point. If you're working on the ground, a hydraulic jack will do the trick. All right, next up we're going to grab an 18 millimeter deep socket and loosen and remove the bottom nut of our sway bar end link that connects to the lower control arm. Now in theory, you could remove the top portion that connects to the sway bar, but I find it easier to do it this way just because there's a lot more room to work with and I can get an impact gun on here. So now we can take the 18 and remove it. With this out of the way, when we go to lower this thing down, the sway bar won't stop it from going as low as we need it. All right, so next we want to tackle the upper control arm to the spindle bolt. Now when we're trying to loosen it, this is going to rotate back and forth. In order to keep it from doing that, to make our lives easier, I'm just going to take this nut off and put our tie rod end back on. Now we don't have to tighten it down, but that'll keep it from moving around too much and help us out. With your lower control arm still supported, grab a 13/16 wrench or a 21, and you're going to go in here and break this upper control arm to spindle nut loose. We have this loose. I'm going to bring the nut down to a couple of the last threads. We're not going to completely remove the nut just yet. As you can see, the spindle is still attached to the upper control arm. We need to grab a hammer and break this guy loose so it'll jolt free. If you completely remove this nut, that'll break free and it'll drop down. So this is going to help catch it. Then we'll come back and remove it. So we're going to grab a hammer and tap on the actual spindle. You don't want to hit the upper control arm. You don't want to risk damaging the bushing. So we're going to hit this side right here on the spindle. All right, so you saw us break that loose. Now we can remove our nut. I'm going to grab a pry bar and put it on the coil and pull down on the upper control arm. That way we can disconnect them. Let's work that nut off. All right, I'm going to drop that off to the side for now. I'm going to grab the spindle and slowly let go of the upper control arm. Now we can bring this down. And now I'm just going to take that nut and again just thread it up on the upper control arm just so we don't lose it. All right, now we have our truck lowered a little bit to gain access to the top of our strut. Now there's 3 nuts if you push this liner back a bit, one in the front right here, and then two at the back. Now you'll see the wire is actually mounted to the top of that, so we'll be able to pop those off in just a bit. I would definitely recommend a 16mm ratcheting wrench. I have a longer guy here to give me a little bit more leverage. This is gonna make life a lot easier just ratcheting back and forth. Otherwise, you can use a regular wrench or a ratchet and socket if you can get it in there. So let's get these 3 nuts off. All right, so now I'm just reaching my hand back in here and I'm gonna wiggle back and forth the wiring harness to get them off of the stud. All right, so we got one of them off, this little clip. Just pull that back and rotate it up. Let's do the same thing on the other one. And again, I know this is tough to see, really just pushing it out of the way. All right, so now we're switching back over to our ratcheting wrench and we're gonna work off the last 2 bolts. All right, at this point, the strut is loose. We just have to get it out of position. So in order to do that, I'm gonna push down on the entire spindle lower control arm assembly, lift this guy up, and pop it out. Just like that.
All right, since our kit does come with a new upper control arm, we will need to remove our stock one. It's just 2 21mm bolts on either side. All right, you can do the same thing for the other side.
All right, once we have everything disassembled, we're now gonna take our new strut assembly and slide it up into the top hat, and then we're gonna lower it into the bottom. We're also gonna use 1 bolt to just temporarily attach it up top. All right, once we have that held in place for us at the top, we can now focus on the bottom. All right, now that we have our strut mounted into the lower control arm, you might need some extra leverage with a large pry bar or something of that sort to just get over this little lip to get the strut into the lower control arm assembly. Now we're gonna press up on our lower control arm with our pull jack. Make sure that stays lined up. All right, once you get the holes relatively lined up, now you can pull on the strut to get it lined up in the hole. Once you get that through, you can now put your nut on. Now we can tighten it down. With our 24mm socket and our 21mm wrench, we're gonna tighten this down. And now you can release the tension from your pull jack. At this point, we can attach our lower sway bar end link bolt, get that threaded on, and tighten it down with our 18mm. Now we can take our outer tie rod and put it back into the knuckle. We can attach our bolt and tighten this up with our 21mm socket. All right, now at this point you can install your upper control arm. We're insert it to the mount just like that. All right, you may need a rubber mallet or something like that to tap it in to get into place. Now we can insert our bolt. Might need to maneuver it around just a little bit to get it lined up. All right, now we can back out our bolts a little bit so we can get our flag bolts in. Once you get that started, you can move on to the other side. Now you can tighten these down to a 21 mil socket. Now you can come back in and tighten down even further. All right, now we can insert the control arm into the knuckle. First, we can remove this protective sleeve, pull that off. And because this is a lift, we might need to push down on the control arm or lift up on the knuckle. All right, like I said, because of the lift, we're gonna need a pry bar to get in between the spring and press down on the arm to get it into the knuckle. Once we have that in there, we can let go and finish tightening it up. All right, with our new hardware attached, it still is a 21 mil, so we're gonna use a 21 mil wrench. All right, now we can get our wheel speed sensor plugged back in. You're just gonna route it along the way out of the way for any moving parts. All right, now our strut top bolts, we still have one installed that was holding it up. We're gonna install the rear two. Kind of hard to see, but you have one in this location and you have one on the exact opposite side. Now the new hardware did change its size, it's now a 15 mil. All right, once you have the control arm in and your strut in, you want to go back and make sure to torque everything down to spec and then repeat for the other side.
All right, first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna get our vehicle supported, get some pull jacks under the axle to support the weight, and then we just need to take out our bolt for our track bar on our driver's side. So we're gonna grab our impact and 21 millimeter socket and take that out. All right, now we're gonna come to our rear sway bar link. We're gonna take our upper bolt out for our mount. So we're gonna grab our impact and 16 millimeter socket and take that out. All right, now we're gonna come to our shock. We're gonna take our lower mount off. So we have our bolt here. We're gonna take a 21 millimeter wrench and our impact and 21 millimeter socket and take that off. All right, now you can go ahead and repeat the same thing for the shock and the sway bar link on the other side. All right, now that we have everything disconnected, what we're gonna do is we're just gonna evenly lower the rear axle so we can get our springs out. You just wanna keep an eye on your brake lines and all of your other harnesses and hoses along the axle. Just make sure you're not pulling on anything. If we need to, we'll disconnect some attach points if we need to.
Welcome back. The kit that we actually have also requires the installation of rear shocks. So we're going to do so by removing both the inner fender liners and also the rear shocks assemblies. We're going to start off by removing a couple 5/16 bolts here to get off the fender liner. And now we can get to this last one with our 5/16. All right, now we're gonna remove this top bolt here. It's an 18mm on our ratcheting wrench. We're gonna slide this over, get that lined up, and then we'll also use a pair of vice grips to clamp onto the bolt. Once you take this top bolt off, you want to rest a hand on the strut itself so it doesn't fall out. And don't forget your upper bushing. All right, once you have the rear strut assembly out, you're going to repeat for the other side. All right, for our new shock absorber, we're going to need to transfer over the collar and some bushings from the old one. So we're going to take our bushing, set that off to the side, pull off the bottom one, and also the collar. And we're going to take the new one, slide the collar back on, get that fitted on. Same exact direction, slide that on, and then this is going to go into the body, and this is going to go on top. Once you have that transferred over, you're going to repeat for the other shock. Now we can install our new shock. Lined up in the mount there. And while holding that in place, we can take our new hardware and thread that on. Our new hardware is actually going to be a 19mm socket. So we're going to get our wrench on there, see if we can get it started a little bit. Once you get your vice grips locked on, you can now start tightening this down. Once you get your upper shock installed and tighten down the nut, you're going to torque that down to factory spec and then repeat for the other side. All right, now for our spring spacer for the rear, it's actually going to mount up into the original housing, but we're also going to add this plate on top. So it's going to slide over just in there, and then it's going to mount underneath with the bolt going through. All right, now that we have our plate right in place right there, we're going to slide in our spacer, hold that up, and thread in our bolt. And we can also reach on top to kind of hold the spacer and the plate together. All right, once you have that in there, a couple threads, it should stay in place. And now you can take a 14mm deep socket and a 15mm wrench to hold it together. Once you have that tightened down and secured inside there, you're going to repeat for the other side. Now we can line up our spring, fit that in there, and pull down on our axle. Once we got our rubber boot in place and spring seated on the bottom, we can repeat for the other side. All right, now that we have both shocks installed and both rear springs, we're going to evenly lift up on our axle to get everything lined up. All right, now we're at the halfway point of lifting up our axle. We're actually going to lift up our track bar and get the bolt lined up. And on the back end, we're going to use our flag nut and get that threaded. And now we can tighten this down with our 21mm socket. Now we can continue lifting up on our axle. Now that we have our axle high enough, we can now start mounting up our sway bar end links. Tighten this down with our 16mm impact. And you can repeat for the other side. All right, now we're gonna mount our bolt to our bottom of our strut. Now we can tighten this down with our 21mm impact and our 21 wrench. Once you get that snugged up, you want to torque that down to spec and repeat for the other side.
That's going to wrap it up here for our review and install of the Rough Country 3.5-inch bolt-on suspension lift kit with the front N3 struts and rear N3 shocks, fitting 2019 and newer four-wheel drive Ram 1500s, excluding RHO, TRX, and V6 models, as well as those equipped with the air suspension system. Thank you so much for watching, and for everything Ram, be sure to keep it right here at AmericanTrucks.com.